But I mean, when you do look at the indictment, do you think it's something you would have brought?
I think, I don't know if I would have approved the indictment, but in the sense I may have exercised discretion and not gone forward with the case. I'm also concerned about having this case going on during the election and diverting people's attention from the issues in the election. I'm also worried about, what the impact is if there are acquittals during the campaign. But as a legal matter, I don't see a problem with the indictment. I think that it's not an abuse. The Department of Justice is not acting to weaponize the department by proceeding against the president for a conspiracy to subvert the electoral process.
Which is what Trump's attorneys are saying, and they're also saying that he was just exercising his First Amendment right here. Do you think that's a valid argument in your view?
No, I really don't think that's a valid argument because, as the indictment says, they're not attacking his First Amendment right. He can say whatever he wants. He can even lie. He can even tell people that the election was stolen when he knew better. But that does not protect you from entering into a conspiracy. All conspiracies involve speech, and all fraud involves speech. So, free speech doesn't give you the right to engage in a fraudulent conspiracy.
Not for nothing, but when even Bill Barr, the guy who unilaterally misrepresented the Mueller report for the express purpose of protecting Donald Trump, when even he comes out and defends the merits of this third indictment against Trump, you know the former president is walking a lonely path. Now, I want to tackle what I think is the most important element of this first, and that is this idea coming out of the Trump camp that this whole indictment by Jack Smith is an attack on Donald Trump's free speech rights. In fact, here's Rudy Giuliani only days ago making this exact claim in an unhinged television appearance.
So here's what I say to Jack Smith. After the Supreme Court threw out your case, which should have been a disgrace, and you should have gone and found another profession because you don't belong in this one. This one will be your legacy, violating the right of free speech of an American citizen. Never mind whether he was president or not. It could be anybody. It could be a homeless person. You don't get to violate people's First Amendment rights, Smith, no matter who the hell you are, or no matter how sick you are with Trump derangement syndrome. And this isn't the first time you've acted like an unethical lawyer. It should be the last.
And this claim was so basic and so predictable that Jack Smith himself preemptively debunked it on page 2 of the indictment. Quote, the defendant had a right, like every American, to speak publicly about the election and even to claim falsely that there had been outcome determinative fraud during the election and that he had won. He was also entitled to formally challenge the results of the election through lawful and appropriate means, such as by seeking recounts or audits of the popular vote in states or filing lawsuits challenging ballots and procedures. Indeed, in many cases, the defendant did pursue these methods of contesting the election results. His efforts to change the outcome in any state through recounts, audits, or legal challenges were uniformly unsuccessful. In other words, Jack Smith already denied this very argument to Republicans because he knew that they would try and claim exactly what they're claiming now. But he makes it perfectly clear on page 2 of a 45-page indictment that Trump had every right to talk about the election and even lie about the election. This indictment is not about those lies. This indictment is about Donald Trump conspiring to defraud the United States, to deprive Americans of their right to a voice in our election, and to prevent Congress from certifying a valid election. Those are the charges, and that's what he's being prosecuted for. Anyone who claims that this has anything to do with free speech is either too stupid or too dishonest. And that's a point that I discussed with Jamie Raskin in our upcoming interview.
Well, obviously, Smith predicted that would be Trump's maneuver. I mean, he's got one move, and so, of course, he's going to be dancing it, but it's not very compelling. The criminal law distinguishes between speech and conduct, and he's not being prosecuted for any of his speech. He's being prosecuted for the criminal conduct he engaged in, and there may have been speech that enabled it at certain points. But again, there's a lot of crimes necessarily involve speech, like insider trading almost always involves speech, like antitrust violations. When companies get together to fix prices, that's all based on speech, but it's the conduct that's being punished. So, they might try and confuse people about that, but they're not going to confuse any judge or any court about that. I mean, we've been around the track in proving that point, and they're basically saying there's a First Amendment defense to conspiracy, which is absurd.
And of course, you can watch that full interview starting on Sunday, so to catch it as soon as it's released, please make sure to subscribe to this channel. Bill Barr would also go on to say in the original clip that the Department of Justice is not being weaponized against Donald Trump, which flies in the face of what the Trump team is trying to claim, which is that the only reason he's facing prosecution is because he's the leading candidate for the Republican nomination. And this is a common refrain for Trump, wherein he frames being held accountable for his own crimes as if he's the victim of some political ploy by the Democrats. He's basically saying that he isn't allowed to be prosecuted while he's a candidate because any prosecution for anything can just be chalked up to election interference, because after all, the prosecution itself may have an impact on voters' decisions. So no candidate can be held accountable, meaning if you commit any crime, if you shoot someone on the street, all you gotta do is declare your candidacy for office and you immediately have a legal force field around you. And if any prosecutors dare try to prosecute you, then all you have to do is wail election interference and you're in the clear, because after all, once you're a candidate, you're no longer subject to laws, which I understand may seem quite compelling if you're someone who is physically incapable of not committing crimes. But I do take issue with one thing that Bill Barr says here, which is this.
I may have exercised discretion and not gone forward with the case. I'm also concerned about having this case going on during the election and diverting people's attention from the issues in the election. I'm also worried about, what the impact is if there are acquittals during the campaign.
That he's worried about this case going on during the election because it might divert people's attention away from the issues. And I'm sorry, but who cares? Since when does the ability of our justice system to function depend on how it might distract people from an election? It doesn't matter if Donald Trump was the only person on the ballot. We don't decide whether or not to pursue justice based on what random events are on the calendar. And hearing Bill Barr even humor this ridiculous notion is a testament to just how pervasive this utterly insane notion is that any prosecution should depend on an election schedule. We're either a nation of laws or we're not. And if we are, then it doesn't matter if someone is the leading contender for the presidency by 99 points out of 100. If they committed a crime, they should be prosecuted for it. The idea that Donald Trump can simultaneously congratulate himself on being the quote-unquote law and order candidate while also making the argument that he shouldn't be subjected to laws because he's a candidate for office really does go to show just how deluded he is. The guy is running for a job whose sole function is to faithfully execute the laws of the United States. How do you square vying for a job and enforcing laws while simultaneously refusing to be subject to any laws? Here's a hint, you can't. So luckily, we don't have to seek Donald Trump's permission, or Bill Barr's for that matter, to move forward with the prosecution because Jack Smith already has. And he's not bending to this absurd notion that candidates for office should have carte blanche to commit crimes, despite Donald Trump's best efforts to will that into existence. Which is not to say that Trump won't continue to lie, to cheat, to steal, to obfuscate the facts, and to incite violence, but none of those tactics are going to delay accountability. He has finally reached the point where he's going to be held accountable for his own actions. Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to the channel and do your part to help grow the progressive media ecosystem. I don't do sponsorships or paid ads, I won't ask for money, but just subscribing to this channel goes a really long way, and it helps get the message out to more people. The subscribe button is right here on the screen. You can also subscribe to my Spanish language channel, which I made to reach those crucial Spanish-speaking voters. That link is on the screen too. And finally, if you want to listen to my audio podcast, you can follow that link as well. Thanks so much for watching.